Now, despite the fact that I look like a monkey humping a football, what you saw there was actually something pretty cool. Let's say instead of being that guy, you're somebody with a lot more training, somebody who makes a living with a rifle, and you've been sent into a building to covertly take out some bad guys. But despite your best efforts, their buddies know you're there and they're coming to get you. Well, if you're lucky, you're armed with one of these. It's a suppressed 300 AAC Blackout, and with subsonic ammunition, it can be as quiet as a suppressed MP5, which is the gold standard for quiet room clearing. But unlike an MP5, all you have to do is change magazines, and you could be shooting a supersonic 30 caliber round that gives you the punch of the AK-47 with the precision and ergonomics of the AR-15. Now, this is not a new idea, but it's one that's recently seen an explosion in popularity. I'm going to talk about why and show you a bit about what this cartridge can do coming up next on Twang and Bang. The 300 Blackout has its roots in three nearly identical calibers: the 300 Whisper, the 300 221, and the 300 Fireball, known collectively as the 300 WTF, which is exactly what went through my mind when I realized it makes four nearly identical calibers. Now, I'm not going to bother trying to explain to you how this happened, but suffice it to say, the Blackout has seen success where the others haven't because its specifications have been adopted by SAMI, or the Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute. This means that the specs are non-proprietary. Anybody can use the specs to make something in 300 AAC Blackout and use its name without having to pay a royalty. It also means that a barrel manufacturer, for example, using the spec can have the confidence that their barrel is going to work with SAMI ammunition. They're not going to end up with a customer service nightmare where everyone's calling them and saying, hey, your barrel doesn't work with my favorite ammunition, or vice versa. So the Blackout spec has managed to reduce both the cost and the risk to manufacturers who want to enter this market segment. The design of the cartridge also makes it readily adaptable to the AR-15 platform. Let me show you some cartridges so you can see what I mean. The cartridge in the middle is your standard 55 grain full metal jacket 5.56, and it's flanked by two 300 AAC Blackout loads. Now, it doesn't take a sharp eye to see that the cases are exactly the same from here down, and that's the source of the compatibility with the AR-15. In fact, if you know how an AR-15 operates, you can already see that the only thing you need to change is the barrel. Everything else stays the same. The upper and lower receivers stay the same. The bolt and bolt carriers stay the same. The buffer and buffer springs stay the same. Most importantly, magazines stay the same. A mag that holds 30 rounds of 5.56 is going to hold 30 rounds of 300 AAC Blackout. Now, even though the case to the 300 AAC Blackout is shorter than the 5.56, it's a more efficient round, delivering about 40% more energy on target with a bullet about twice the weight. This can make a big difference when your target is in a vehicle or hiding behind a wall or a donkey cart or whatever. And this brings me to the star performer of the 300 Blackout, the Barnes Vortex 110 grain TAC-TX black tip. It has a barrier blind bullet specifically designed for the Blackout, and it's loaded in a factory produced 300 AAC Blackout case. It's worthy of its own video, so I'm not going to detail its performance here. But contrast that with this cartridge on the right. It's a factory reload from Summit Ammunition. It uses an inexpensive 147 grain bullet pulled from government surplus 308 rounds. What makes this really neat is that the case is actually made from a once fired 5.56 case, chopped here and then necked down to 30 caliber. Yet these two cases are indistinguishable from each other with the exception of the head stamp. This goes to show that the Blackout is a reloader's dream because it can be made from two of the most common components out there: used 5.56 cases and 308 caliber bullets. The design of the cartridge also means that factory-loaded ammunition has been introduced at a very rapid pace. In fact, most factory-loaded 300 Whisper ammunition is safe to use out of a blackout chamber. Now, of course, you should check with the ammunition manufacturer to make sure that it's compatible, but that adds to the variety of the ammunition that you can use. Let's get to shooting so you can see what this cartridge is capable of. First up is the Remington 220 grain Subsonic. So you can see this entered here and came out here with no real destruction to the watermelon. I wouldn't want my head to look like that watermelon. I mean, did you see the amount of water that came out of the back of that thing? So if you're stuck with using non-expanding rounds in your line of work, that Remington 220 grain round is going to get the job done. At least as well as a 9mm full metal jacket, probably even better. But for home defense purposes, you're going to want to see a lot more damage than that. Let's take a look at what adding velocity does to the effectiveness of the 300 Blackout. Next up is the Remington UMC 115 grain closed tip flat base. Wow. Big difference between a non-expanding supersonic and non-expanding subsonic right there. Well, that was pretty dramatic, wasn't it? Just goes to show you how important velocity is to the effectiveness of a round. But those were both non-expanding rounds, and unless you're forced to use them, you shouldn't. Wait till you see what happens to the watermelon when I shoot it with a Hornady VMAX. Holy crap! Wow! I think that's the biggest piece left right there. Wow! That thing just blew right up. And you want to blow up a watermelon, you want to use a Hornady VMAX, that's for sure. Blowing up watermelons never gets old. Despite not being scientific, I think those three clips illustrated why, unless you have to, you don't want to use subsonic. You don't want to use non-expanding ammunition when your life is on the line. You want to use a good, high-velocity, expanding load. That's not to say that subsonic ammunition doesn't have its place. In addition to the fact that it's just really fun to shoot, you can also use it on ranges and on targets that are normally designated for pistol use only. That gives you shooting opportunities that you're just not going to have with your standard AR-15. The 300 Blackout isn't just for door kickers and home defense. It's also a really cool way of taking your AR-15 and turning it into a 30-30 for hunting. That's because the ballistics of the Blackout are similar to a light 30-30 load. This makes it effective on deer-sized game out to about 150 yards or even more if you're a true rifleman and can calculate wind drift. If you want to learn more about the AAC Blackout, check out the links that I have in the video description below. I'm going to keep them up to date as best I can as time goes on. If you like the video, please click the like button. It'll really help me out. And I've got a long list of videos that I want to put out for you, so be sure to subscribe to keep up to date. I really appreciate you tuning into the video. I look forward to seeing you next time on Twang and Bang.